Hi, class. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Poe's his idea of the unity of effect, which kind of stems from that the essay that you read, where he discusses his philosophy for writing. I like to think of it as a way that Poe can kind of sway his readers, right? To feel certain emotions, to think certain ways, basically, to elicit different kinds of responses. So again, just a quick run through. Poe thought that a work of fiction should be experienced in one setting, and I was thinking about that, and he for a writer who was predominantly, he wrote in what the mid 19th century, maybe. The fact that he's still popular, I think one of the reasons is because most of his works are short, and if you combine that with the attention span of today, not that I'm saying that in a negative way, but it's a fact. There's a lot of research done on this idea of neuroplasticity. Our brains, can change their shapes, and the human brain today has become more adept at gathering information rather quickly because of the new mediums that we are faced with. Mainly screens. So we don't really have the patience, or I would argue the ability. Most don't, because we have trained our brains to gather information in a new way. So the fact that Poe writes, these short stories, and he does so, with this idea of the unity of effect, I think makes his works a little more readable for the 21st century. But anyway, so his primary concern was unity of effect, which means that every element of the story should help create a single emotional impact. Poe thought that, as far as the short story went, the writer should, work to create this single and total psychological effect upon the reader. So all the elements, theme, plot, character, point of view, simile, metaphor, right, should kind of work together. Language, right, should work together to create a mood, right? So there's a difference between tone and mood. Tone is the writer's attitude towards their work, and a writer will convey tone through diction, language use, and what we feel, the reader, that's the mood, right? So Poe is deliberately trying to create something here with this unity of effect. And the Black Cats, and I'm going to pause there for a minute. A unity of effect could, I would argue that there isn't one right way to put it, because as adult readers, we have our own schemas, we have our own prior knowledge, so we are going to use our prior knowledge to make sense of anything we read. So we may have a different kind of effect per se, not completely a difference, but kind of under the same umbrella. There are different ways to describe sadness, maybe, right? So, but anyway, don't look for the quote unquote right answer when you're coming up with this unity of effect. I'm just going to focus on a few things: literary elements, just two: setting, symbolism, and also the writing style. Setting. So Poe borrows from this Gothic tradition, and in the Gothic tradition, most of these novels were set in abandoned castles that had secret chambers, secret passages, were kind of spooky and mysterious. The Gothic novel was really popular in the 18th century, right? But Poe doesn't have castles. But let's take a look at some of his quotes here. Right, so this is from The Black Cat. The cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. So I don't know about you, but I got this sense of being in a cellar, right? That dampness, that cold. So although he doesn't have the castles that a Gothic novel has, he does incorporate the style, right? That does kind of create this spooky tone, right? And here's another example. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the rest of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall up the hole up as before so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. So again, kind of mysterious, spooky, right? He's talking about the corpse here. Right. So this is pretty early on. So again, this setting helps to create this mood. If we go back, right? So in the Black Cat, we have this ominous tone, right? And this mood that the reader feels that leads us to aversion. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. All right. Symbolism, I think, was key here. Again, right? Unity of effect. So I think it's kind of cool to trace, right, the different possibilities of what a black cat can symbolize. The narrator's wife early on talks about how black cats are nothing but witches in disguise, right? So here we have a little bit of foreshadowing, right? So Poe plants this idea into the reader's head, right? I mean, not all readers are going to get that, and part of the reason was I just talked about schema theory, right? So maybe you heard this term before. Pluto, right? In Roman mythology, I believe, right? Pluto was god of the underworld. Again, darkness and mystery. Right? Same as a witch is in disguise. Traditionally, black cats symbolize death and darkness, right? So see how it's all kind of working together. The first cat, again, Pluto, right, could be a symbol of the narrator's wife. Why? Because traditionally, black cats symbolize femininity. I had a hard time saying that word, right? And what happens to Pluto? Right? He kills Pluto, right? So that could be, how the narrator feels towards his wife. Black cat is also symbolic of the narrator. Again, this is the second black cat, right? Let's take a look at this quote. Its partiality for myself seemed to increase. I began to look upon it with unutterable loathing. So, one could see the second black cat as a symbol for the narrator, right? Because the narrator might in turn see himself in the black cat, right? And he could feel guilty, right? Because the black cat kind of represents the evil things that he has done. All right. Writing style, very cryptic. Maybe even like a lot of what what we could call beating around the bush, mitigated speech, right? Let's take a look here. Married early and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. So this is kind of important, right? Rather than tell us that he gets along with his wife, right? He's telling us that I don't really get along too badly. Okay? And remember, the narrator's telling us the story. So rather than being blunt, right? He's trying to hide the fact, which could lead us to think, well, what is the narrator hiding? Take a look at this example. Context. Here, the narrator tries to explain the image of the cat he saw in his bedroom, right? This is after he hung the cat. Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. What is he saying? So, again, this could be meant to distract us. It could show the narrator's guilt. Let's read that again. Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not take... It's almost like he's trying to come up with the reason for the way he has... for his actions, right? So again, he's trying to deflect blame, which could suggest his guilt, which then in turn could suggest why he lows that second black cat, right? So all of these actions, right? And, the things that he does to the cats, the things that he does, the fact that he murders his wife, right? All this kind of leads, as part of that unity of effect, this ominous tone, right, that keeps the reader on the edge of his seat. But at the end, we, I think, are supposed to feel some sort of aversion, right, towards this character. It's like, oh, this guy's crazy, which he is, right? And that also comes out in the writing style as well. So I could have talked about this, for at least a half an hour, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea, a different perspective of how this unity of effect works. Thanks for listening.